The process of visualizing is something that we all have, right? We visualize a better life, we visualize a better business, and then we go through the creation process. And guess what happens when we go through that creation process? Imposter syndrome comes in. And so I'm glad you're tuning in into this episode because we're going to be talking about this imposter syndrome. Let's tune in, and I'm happy to have you. You are listening on your favorite podcast provider, or perhaps watching this show on your big TV screen. Regardless, I'm excited to have you. My name is Martine Cadet, and I am the host of the Visualize and Create show. You will be able to meet amazing individuals that are going to inspire you, motivate you, and give you the tools for you to visualize and create whatever it is that you want. Make sure you check out the show notes and share this with a friend. Welcome to another episode of the Visualize and Create show. My name is Martine Cadet. I'm your host, and I'm bubbly and very happy to have my guest today. His name is Vince, and let me tell you, this is why I love being online, because you get to meet so many amazing people. And when you start that process of creating what you have visualized for yourself, and you accept the fact that you're going to be speaking to strangers, man, oh man, oh man, you get to meet amazing people. And so, Vince, I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here, Martine. And mainly because, I know we're doing a show, but selfishly, this is just a chance for you and I to catch up. We're both way too busy. This doesn't happen enough.
I agree with you. I agree. Listen, for you watching or listening, Vince and I are constantly checking in on each other. He's been supporting me in my process. And as he said, we're super busy. We're busy helping you. We're busy helping you doing the things that you want to do. And one of the things that Vince is very good at is helping you with your imposter syndrome. And so I want to dive into the conversation with you, Vince, because I'm sure you did not wake up like this yesterday where you were like, imposter syndrome, I know how to deal with you. Tell us a little bit about how you came to become this expert in helping people embrace this thing. I hate having this imposter syndrome coming in.
Yep. Well, by the time I finish, Martine, you will love having imposter syndrome because that's what I had to learn to do. And honestly, this is a very long journey. So I grew up in a very abusive household. I grew up in just a not very nice environment. We grew up in poverty and just horrendous kind of conditions. This concept of success was a foreign kind of thing. It wasn't for people like me. In fact, there was a narrative that consistently came out of my parents' mouth was, if somebody had succeeded, if somebody had money, if somebody had some level of notoriety, then they didn't deserve it. We did, but of course we never got it and they did. So it was this weird kind of mentality that I had to address in my life. And I still remember the first time I ever felt different about that was when I was age 11. I had this incredible teacher, a genuinely inspiring person. And I was a cheeky kid. I was very bright and very bored and in a very kind of poor school. And we were talking about school projects or something. I think I was doing a project on sharks because, I was a boy and boys did sharks or spiders. That's what we did back then. Doing this project on sharks. And he goes, oh, don't forget class, we're going to get ready for oral presentations. And I'm like, oh, and he goes, what? And I said, why are we doing that? And he said, it'll prepare you for doing oral presentations later in life. And I said, when are we ever going to get the opportunity to do that? And the rest of the class like, yeah. And he goes, okay, how about now? And he pulled me up in front of the class and I went, what? He goes, you're going to talk to the class for 5 minutes on a topic in class. What's the topic that Vince is going to speak on? And I thought, you jerk. And of course, being the creative 11-year-olds that they are, 10 and 11-year-olds in that class, they came up with an egg. So I had to speak for 5 minutes on an egg. I had no time to think. My mind went completely blank. And he said, right, you've got 20 seconds to prepare. And your time starts now. And in that moment, the only thought that was in my head was that silly saying, which came first, the chicken or the egg? So that came out of my mouth. The moment I spoke that, my brain went into this other mode. And suddenly the words started flowing. It started like this narrative started coming. I don't even remember what I talked about, to be honest. All I remember is thinking, wow, if I pull that thread, all these people would start laughing. And if I pull that thread, they'd kind of gasp and go, whoa. And I pull that thread and they laugh again. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, it was seriously, if you're addicted to public speaking like I am, you know that feeling. It's like a rush. But we got to the end of that and he goes, right, you got 20 seconds left. And they kind of finished off and I went, blah, blah, blah. And I said, so obviously the chicken came first and the whole class erupted. And I don't remember all of the bits in between, but I remember that feeling. And I remember turning around, buzzing, thinking, haha, I one up them. And I turned to him, looked at him, and he said, that was fantastic. And I said, oh, thanks. And he goes, no, you need to listen. He said, that was amazing. You actually have a gift, Vince. He said, you realize you could do something really significant with your life.
You are currently watching or listening to the Visualize and Create show. My name is Martine Cadet and I am your host. I'm quickly interrupting this episode just to share with you that myself, I have been able to visualize and start the process of creating what it is that I always wanted for myself. Not too long ago, I was laid off from my corporate job and I had to make the decision if I wanted to go on and be in business for myself. And I have continued to create. And so I am here to really applaud you for tuning in to listen to this episode. And so let's get back to the show because it's a good one.
And the moment I heard those words, two things happened. The first thing that happened was I felt this weird bubbly feeling on the inside, and that was hope. And I'd never, ever felt that hope before. And the second thing that happened is I did not feel like I deserved it. And that was the start of starting to realize that there was this thing that was kind of holding me back. And that mentality went on many years later. I remember I won tickets to this business breakfast. So I was still a poor student at the time. In fact, I'd just kind of gone out into my corporate career. And I really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'd seen it in the movies. I wanted to be an inventor, actually. I saw Gremlins and watched all the stupid gadgets they were building. I'm like, that's me. That's totally me. But I remember I got this tickets to this business breakfast. They had the head of Adobe for the Oceanic region was coming over speaking about, what he does, his role, and he's a really inspiring speaker. So I thought, right, I know everyone there's going to be in a suit. I don't own a suit. So I went to like a secondhand shop and, like a thrift shop and found the cheapest suit that I could afford, which was like $10. It was this horrible gray, shiny suit. It was so long, like the sleeves went right down to my fingertips. I had a ponytail that it was not a great look. Honestly, my daughter would be devastated if she saw that.
Hold on. You had a ponytail. Stop it.
I had a ponytail. Okay. I also had a mullet, right if you know what a mullet is.
If you are listening to this episode and you have yet to tune in to the video version of this episode, it is imperative that you do, and you'll understand why we're laughing. And so you had a ponytail. I love it.
I had a ponytail. That was back when I had hair. Yes, Martine. But I turned up at this event and I honestly, complete fish out of water. I didn't feel like I belonged there at all. And I remember feeling really, really insecure. I went into the room and in my mind, like if I visualized the other people that were there, they were all in Armani suits, right? And the reason was because everybody just seemed to have, everything, fit them for starters. Everything looked good and they seemed to have their lives all sorted. So I'm feeling like a complete outsider and I'm sitting at this table and I thought, right, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to eat all the food because honestly, I was poor and there was free food and drink. I'm like, hello, I'm very happy right now. But I also knew I wanted to learn from this guy. And I was sitting there and I felt, alone. And he did this presentation. It was amazing. I took all these notes. And then he came around each of the tables and he asked them, any questions. And I saw him at the table next to ours. So I was thinking in my mind, I can remember the conversation in my mind, actually. My mind was going, okay, Vince, listen, you got one shot, man. Like seriously, one shot to make an impression here because you don't belong at this table. You don't belong at this event. And it's really obvious to everybody else, right? You don't deserve this. You haven't earned this. So you got one shot to ask a good question. And while my brain's thinking that, I realized he's standing next to me and he said, any questions? And my mouth just decided to ask a question without engaging my brain at all. And I just said, at what point in your life did you know you had made it? And my brain just went, dude, seriously? That's the dumbest question ever. Oh, I'm out of here. So I'm going through this internal monologue. I look around the table and everyone kind of rolled their eyes a little bit, or at least that's how it felt to me. It felt like everyone was kind of mocking me and I just wanted to run and hide. I honestly wanted to run out of there in tears. I felt like such an idiot. And his response, though, surprised me. He turned around, he said, actually, that's a really good question. And the whole table kind of went, like, really? And he goes, I'm going to let you in on a little secret, Vince. And I'm like, oh my goodness, when you've got someone of that stature there who's just delivered this inspiring speech saying, I'm going to give you a secret, I'll tell you a secret. you pay attention. He goes, I'm going to let you in on my early morning routine. And I was like, oh my goodness. Now I had heard that morning routines kind of make this successful people, So I'm like, okay, I'm going to write down everything he says. So I grab my pen and my paper, and he goes, I get up every morning deliberately early. And I'm like, deliberately early. Oh, interesting. What time? So he tells us the time. And he goes, and then I get out of bed, I go straight to the bathroom. I'm going, interesting, not the kitchen, the bathroom. Didn't go to the computer. Interesting point, the bathroom. I'm writing all this down. He goes, I fill up the sink with cold water. I'm like, cold water? Should I ask him the temperature? No, I'll just write down cold. That'll be okay. And then he goes, and then I splash that cold water on my face. I look myself in the mirror and I go, today's the day they find out you're a fraud. And I went, what? And he goes, I've never felt like I've succeeded. I've never felt like I've made it. And I never feel like I belong. He said, most of us, and this is the thing that got me, he indicated right around the table, he said, most of us here deal with the exact same thing. And when I looked at these people that he was indicating around the table, they were all nodding as well. And that made me realize a few things. First of all, it made me realize that, I had this imposter syndrome. It didn't even have a name back then. I don't think we didn't really know what it was. But I also realized that if everybody at that table felt the same way, then I had as much right to be at that table as all of them. So this started this whole journey of trying to understand why I feel this way and why other people feel this way as well. Because it's actually devastating me to think of all of these, ultra successful looking people who are on the inside just as insecure and just as afraid as I am. So I started to understand more about this. And when you understand what imposter syndrome is, it's going to reshape how you think about it. Because imposter syndrome isn't a bad thing. And this is the bit we have to get our heads around. It's not negative at all. It's what you do with imposter syndrome that is bad or that is negative. In fact, imposter syndrome is just a set of signals from your brain to say, hey, Martine, guess what? You're outside of your comfort zone right now. And I'm worried that you're going to be exposed. I'm worried that you're at risk. I'm worried that people are going to see through you. So therefore, I want to wrap you up in this nice little safe bubble wrap bundle. So I'm going to bring you back here in your comfort zone where it's all nice and cozy. And it uses fear to motivate you to get back into that comfort zone. So when you break it down like this, you realize, and you've got to understand this concept, we have two parts of our brain. We have the part of the brain that feels that kind of stuff, that goes, hey, here are all the signals. Here is the voice that's screaming at you, And I say screaming because, by the way, imposter syndrome doesn't whisper at me anymore. It just goes, Vance, you're outside of your comfort zone. You don't deserve to be here. I'm like, shut up, brain. But you've got this part of the brain that's telling you all these things. But then you've got the part of the brain which actually you decide what to do with that information. And that's the most important piece. Because when you understand that your brain's just telling you that you are outside of your comfort zone, guess what? That's exactly where you have to be. As entrepreneurs, you don't succeed, you don't break through, you don't grow, you don't learn in your comfort zone. You actually need to be outside your comfort zone for all of these things to happen. So when you understand that and when you embrace that, you start to realize that when imposter syndrome, basically when your brain's going, hey, Martine, you don't deserve to do this. What makes you think you're an author? What makes you think you can run a podcast? What makes you think anyone wants to listen to you? When your brain's telling you that, your brain's actually saying, Martine, guess what? You're exactly where you need to be. You're doing well. So we get to decide how to deal with those signals. And when we decide that actually I'm going to embrace that and go, thank you, brain, super appreciate you looking after me, super appreciate that you're trying to keep me safe. But guess what? I don't need to be safe. I'm exactly where I need to be. And you know what? I've got this. So that's part of the process that I had to learn, part of the understanding about imposter syndrome. And don't get me wrong, that's not a quick fix where you suddenly go, oh, that's it. I'm totally cured now. Oh, yay. I'm telling you now, I remember a couple of years ago, about 3 years ago, Martine, or 3 or 4 years ago, I was selected by Adobe to speak at this conference in San Francisco. And they were absolutely adamant. They said, right, you've got to come and speak at this conference. And I'm like, okay, sure. And they were going to pay for, business class airfares and put me in a 5-star hotel. And I said, appreciate that, but I'll pay my own way because we used Adobe products in our business. And I didn't want anyone to think there was conflict of interest. But luckily my business found out about it and went, nah, we're paying for you to go over the events. And I'm like, sweet, business class again. Woohoo. So I'm flying to San Francisco and I'm getting up on stage, and I'm on stage with all of the biggest names. Like there was Brian Solis there, and Hanley there, I think Seth Godin was there, all these people who I look up to. And they had 25 keynote speakers there. They had 25 keynotes, and they had a bunch of celebrities as well. They had like Jamie Foxx was there. They had Flo Rida and a whole bunch of Olympic athletes. They were kind of the celebrity speakers, but the 25 speakers were there for a reason, because they were the first inductees into the Fearless 50, which was a program to recognize the top 50 marketers in the world. And I did not know this. And I'm standing on stage with a bunch of people that I've read every book of, a bunch of people that I look up to, and I'm fanboying out on this stage, just going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm on stage with Anne Handley. Oh, I can't wait to talk to her about writing my book. Oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm on here with Brian Solis. I've always wanted to hear Brian Solis speak, and he is unbelievably good at it. So I'm geeking out there. And then they're telling me, you're in the same category as these people. And my brain just went, nah, they've obviously got the wrong Vince. You know, at some point they're going to realize there's 2 Vince Warnocks in the world, and they really reached out to the wrong one. And it's going to be super embarrassing for them, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy it. So I'm there. And I still remember there was a session not long after my session, actually. So, you know, you're there speaking to 7,000 odd people. I was in this other session, and there's a woman talking about imposter syndrome. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I know all about imposter syndrome, and she's this professor who's doing a study on it. So she was reading out all the stats, and I'm writing them down, going, I'm going to write a book on this one day. This is going to be super useful. And then she started talking about who's more susceptible to imposter syndrome, which of course is all of us. If we're entrepreneurs, you're definitely susceptible to imposter syndrome. But then she started talking about the sabotage that we do, things like procrastination, things like perfectionism, things like basically just disappearing and hiding and things like that. And it was like, basically, it was like a checklist of everything that I do. And that was quite confronting. So even though I understood what imposter syndrome is, and I could embrace imposter syndrome and certainly deal with it a lot better than I did when I was younger, I still realized that it had a bit of a grip on me. So I wanted to go to the next session. I couldn't do it, Martine. I had to go to Starbucks around the corner. And I'm sitting there, and the poor girl that worked at Starbucks, I'm sitting in the corner, and she came over, she goes, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. I've got these tears streaming down my face. I'm going, I'm just trying to sort my life out. She's like, okay, crazy person. So you still need to deal with it and things, but you've got to constantly remind yourself that it is just a signal that you're exactly where you need to be. And a good way to deal with this, actually, a good way to remind yourself, is to create something called an impact list, which is a list of all the people that you impact, not just in your business. I do it in my life and everything. I started, and when you start this list, by the way, you'll probably think of about 3 people, and then you go, well, that's it. That's all I can think of. Keep coming back to that list, and you will just, all these names of people, all these ways that you're impacting people will start to flow. But I put things down there about, some of the breakthrough my clients get, that look on their face when they publish their first book, that look on their face when they double their income, and they're all like, oh my goodness, they're popping the champagne, all those kind of things. I write down who they are, I write down how I helped them and what the result was. But I also write down my neighbor who had a bad hip, and it was pouring with rain. I thought, if he goes and puts his wheelie bin down at the curb, then he's going to slip over. So I went and just did it for him in the morning without telling him. And the next day, he was just so blown away. He was talking to me like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you did that for me. Thank you. And I was like, it actually was nothing. But then I saw the look on his face, and I'm adding that to the impact list. But you write this list down, and it does a number of things for you. Number one, it reminds you why you're doing what you do, which is really, really important. The other thing that happens is, on those days where imposter syndrome is screaming at you, that's your brain basically going, hey, I'm going to yell at you, but I'm going to tell you things that aren't aligned with the evidence. In other words, what right do you have to write a book? That's a common one that comes up with my clients. What makes you think anyone wants to listen to what you say? Well, when you suddenly are reading a list of all the ways that you've impacted people through the advice you've given, well, actually, a lot of people want to hear what you have to say. And just sharing your story is going to impact all these people as well. So it kind of connects you with that, puts a bit of a truth lens over top of that imposter syndrome. But the other thing that happens, and this is the most important thing, is if you understand how our eyes work, and I'm talking about our metaphorical eyes, but we use the physical eyes as a way to describe this. With your eyes, you have your vision and you have your peripheral vision, right? So when you're looking inward, i.e. when imposter syndrome is screaming at you, you're looking at yourself. And you're going, this is about me being exposed. This is about me feeling like this. So you're looking at yourself. The moment you look at this list, you shift your focus from you to all of these other people. And when you do that, the things that are close to you are now in your peripheral vision. In other words, imposter syndrome itself, all the stuff about you is now blurred because it's in the imposter syndrome. So therefore, you're not focused on that. So it actually shifts your focus onto what's most important. It makes it not about you. And that makes it a heck of a lot easier to deal with. In fact, best example I've got of this, Martine, my daughter playing netball one day. She was an avid netball player. Like, honestly, she just loved the sport. She was really, really good at it. They played on a concrete court, freezing cold. In fact, it had been raining and everything. These poor girls had to endure all this. I think she was about 11 or 12. And she played this team that was really good, but also really aggressive. And my daughter's team had the upper hand. So one of the players decided they were going to play the player rather than the ball. So she kicked the back of my daughter's leg and bam, my daughter went down, knee on the concrete, blood pouring out everywhere. Well, I say blood pouring out everywhere because I'm her parent and I'm like, oh my goodness, there's blood. Oh, she's dying. But she had blood all dripping down her knee. But it didn't stop her. She went to put weight on the leg and I could see her face. She kind of cringed and she went, she flinched. And you realize she's in a lot of pain, but she's focused on something external. She was focused on the game. So she took a few more steps, like trying to hobble to get a few more steps, intercepted the ball, threw it off to somebody else. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then they kind of, in the end, my daughter's team won by like 1 point. It was amazing. But she intercepted all this. And then the moment that full-time whistle blew, then everyone was like, yay. And she was like, yes, you see that look on her face, like, we did it, we did it. Then she looks down at her knee and suddenly her focus is now internal. She looks down at her knee and the tears started flowing and she realized how much pain she was in. But when she was focused on the game, i.e. external, she didn't feel that pain at all. So it's a very different way to come look at imposter syndrome. But I highly recommend each of you write down your impact list and actually try and embrace that feeling as a signal that you're exactly where you need to be.
Oh my gosh, you were so right at the top of the conversation when you said at the end of this episode, you will clearly embrace imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And if you're watching or listening, hopefully you caught all of that. And if not, I invite you to rewatch or re-listen to it, because those 3 things that I'm going to kind of summarize that you talk to us about are so important. Even for me, like I know I continuously experience imposter syndrome. For instance, the fact that I speak French and Creole fluently and not English, it's a language that I learned, right? So several times you'll find me as a professor. I teach in colleges now, right? In front of my students where I have that imposter syndrome saying, girl, you can't speak English for nothing. Okay. Who are you teaching those students and whatever, and I hear it. And so number one, that's self-talk, right? And listen, even if you're watching or listening to this and you're like, Vince, Martine, I'm not an entrepreneur, I don't have a business, but you guess what? You probably have a job and where you have to report to your VP or your boss or do presentations and be in front of people and connect, and you feel that imposter syndrome, right? And so regardless of where you are right now, I truly believe, and I'm hoping, Vince and I are hoping that this conversation is going to help you. And so work on that self-talk, right? So you can really know how to manage this voice talking to you saying that you're not worthy. And that impact list, my goodness, what a great idea, right? I know for me, Vince, many times as a professional speaker, and I continue to invest in my speaking engagements and whatnot, very often till this day, before I hit the stage, right, I feel that imposter syndrome. But to your point, though, reminding myself of that impact list is so important. It builds that confidence, right? So build that impact list. And the other thing that I want to dive into is that third point that you made before we end the show in regards to it's not about you, it's about the situation you're in. So I know you shared that experience with your daughter, and to put it into context. And so thank you for that. And I think it's just so important for us to talk through this a little bit more. I would love to, because if someone listening right now who's like, yeah, I want to have clients for my business, I want to scale, or I want to start, but I'm afraid that people are going to look at me and say, you're not good enough. And making that switch to it's not about you, it's about your message, right? It's
Totally
going to help. Can you just dissect this a little bit more for us and help the person that's listening, watching right now and saying, I'm ready, but I don't know if I am?
Well, here's the thing. This is something I had to get my head around. In fact, every one of my clients has to get their head around as well, because you're not unique in feeling this. You really aren't. You're not unique in thinking, oh man, but what if people judge me? And here's this is going to scare you for a moment, but bear with me on this. People may actually judge you. Seriously. And I looked at this when I left Cigna. I was the chief marketing officer at Cigna. And when I decided I was going to pack that all in, that was literally the dream job. When you're a marketer, that was the pinnacle. You're in a Fortune 100 company. You're the chief marketing officer there. You literally get paid ludicrous amount of money. You get to travel the world, speak everywhere, which, by the way, I love doing. And you get all these kind of accolades and awards. You're thinking, okay, this is the dream job, but I don't want it. And I felt really guilty and really kind of a bit of shame about that as well. And when I left there and I said, I'm going to be a full-time author, and then obviously launching my publishing company and launching all the other things I do, I was a little bit afraid to tell people that work there that, because I was afraid that some of them would go, oh, who do you think you are? What makes you think you're an author? And I'm like, well, I've already got one book out, but I'm going to put multiple out, you know? So I was really worried, but I had to come to terms with the fact that actually some of them there may actually judge me on that. But if they do, by the way, and this is truth, if they do, they're not judging you, they're judging themselves. They're not going, what right do you have to do that? Usually it's from a position of, oh, damn, I'm jealous. I wish I had the courage to do what you're doing. But they also, the other thing is the majority of them there won't be judging you at all, positively or negatively, because actually most people are only fixated on their own life. So stop worrying about what other people think and start worrying about who you're going to help. So I had to kind of come to that conclusion of that. But the other thing I started to realize, and this is where the impact list really comes in, is when you're looking at all those people there, right? Because I'm the same as you. Like, I want to grow my business. I want to get more clients. I want to get more income. I want to, all those kind of things. You know, everybody wants these things. That's why we're in business. But when you look at that list, that kind of shifts. It shifts from me, i.e. my income, my clients, my business, to if I didn't show up, like if I look at that impact list, look at all those people, if I didn't show up for these people, if I didn't get out there and actually let them know how I can help them, if I didn't make an offer to them and say, you know what, come and work with me, I'll help you with this. I'll help you to become an author. In fact, not just an author, a best-selling author. Come and work with me. If you deny them that because you're afraid, you're denying them the success. So it's no longer about you. It's about all of those people. And I know for a fact, if you're listening to Martine's podcast, if you're watching Martine's videos and things, then you're the same as Martine and I. You're somebody who genuinely wants to make an impact in this world, whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through your work, whether it's through your community stuff. You're just a decent human being, right? Because that's who Martine is. So because of that, I know that when you look at that list and you look at those people and you realize that by not showing up, you're denying them, I know that that's going to help to motivate you to move forward. So this is how I deal with it. I actually make it not about me anymore. I look at it and go, you know what? I've seen the list of clients that I've helped. I've seen the breakthroughs that everybody has. I've seen the lives that I've managed to change, even just from the people that I hire, the people that come on board the team, seeing them elevate themselves, seeing them step into thought leadership, seeing them, you know, have a steady income and to be able to provide for their families. All of that, I would be denying them if I didn't show up for my business or didn't show up with what I'm trying to build.
So powerful. Oh my goodness. And for you watching, listening, and you're just getting started, right? For example, this is for you because, you know, primarily for you because you're still thinking, I don't know if I'm good enough. Listen, before this show ends and your homework, know that I give you homework on on all my episode. You have to check the show notes because in there, Vince is going to be sharing support, right? To help you start. And for you that's listening or watching that's been at it, know that this is the perfect episode. And just so you know, we appreciate you listening and watching all the way to this point. To us, to Vince and I, that means that you're invested, and that right there shows that you are fighting that imposter syndrome, that yes, you are ready. And so Vince, you mentioned a couple of things here, and I know what you do and what you have to offer, but I'd love for you, and we have all of this in the show notes, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more about, because you mentioned your clients and, you know, publishing bestseller books. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you have in the show notes as far as helping us?
Yeah, look, the main thing you're going to see in the show notes is a link to my website, which is chasingtheinsights.com. That's where I have my podcast with amazing guests like Martine. But also you can see a couple of really important links on there as an entrepreneur. One of them is a link to a free strategy call. And if you're struggling with any of this, you're struggling with direction, you're struggling with marketing, you're struggling with clarity in your business, book some time with me. I genuinely love to give back, and there's no obligation on that. You know, at the end of that, I'll usually tell you how I can work with you if I think there's a good fit there, but often I even forget to do that, which is terrible. But just book some time with me. At the end of that session, I'm going to give you some clarity and we'll give you a roadmap of where you should be heading. But the other thing you're going to see there, and that's how I help a lot of my clients, by the way, is I help them with that. I give them the direction. I help them to position themselves as thought leaders, to really elevate themselves in a very crowded and very white noise kind of marketplace. The other thing you're going to see there is kind of tied to that. And as we mentioned in the episode, I have a publishing company called ATG Publishing. And with that, I help a lot of entrepreneurs become authors. So if that's something that you're interested in, if that's something that you really want to use to elevate your business, and trust me when I tell you, being an author opens so many doors. It is ridiculous. It'll get you booked on more conferences, more podcasts. It'll get you, I mean, you can use this as a lead magnet for clients, as a value add for your current clients. There's so many different reasons why becoming an author is really important, but we make it really accessible for you. So if you want to publish your solo book, talk to me. We can look at what that looks like, but also we do collaboration books where we'll bring you together with 9 other entrepreneurs, really low cost deal where you get to write a chapter and become a best-selling author. So go check it out, chasingtheinsights.com. You'll see all the links on the menu there. I make it nice and easy for everyone because I'm a simple guy, so really easy.
This episode, honestly, Vince, is a great recap of what this show is all about. Because not only, a lot of us visualize what we want, but we're stuck in the creation mode because in the middle of that, there's that imposter syndrome. And today you have helped us understand that it is a good thing and there is a way to embrace it so that you can move on and start creating, whether it's launching and publishing your first book, second book, third book, who knows, even having your own podcast, whatever it is that you want to create. The time is now, and Vince is right here. And by the way, when you connect with Vince during your discovery call, let him know that you watched this episode and that you listened to it if you watched it. And again, for those of you listening, you have to tune into the video because again, that ponytail conversation earlier, you got to know what it means. And so make sure you tune in and watch the actual video. Make sure you share this with a friend, your family member. Download the app so you don't miss out on episodes. They're coming in quick and very often, and shoot me a message and definitely connect with Vince. Vince, thank you so much for making time from your busy schedule to come and have this conversation. Now, listen, I'm warning you now, and for you listening and watching, Vince is coming back. So FYI, and tune into his podcast. Really great. Chasing the Insights. Love it. I was on there. I think I always say this. I'm episode 99. I only remember this because once you published it, Vince, I was like, I got 99 problems, but talking to Vince ain't one. That's what I remember saying to myself. So I'm episode 99 on Chasing the Insights.
Yeah, there we go.
With Vince. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to have you again on the show, Vince.
I cannot wait to come back. Thank you, Martine.
You have just listened or watched the Visualize and Create show. Don't forget to download our app and make sure to leave us a review. And before I go, I do want you to visit my website, martinecadet.com. Browse around. There's a lot of stuff in there. I have a store. I also have great services available for you so that you can visualize and create anything that you want. I will see you in the next episode.